My name is Sujak Rahman. I've been an artist for maybe about almost 50 years. But of course, to be an artist is not so simple as what people think. And when I grown up, I have to learn about physics, chemistry. So I'm thinking myself, why should I learn physics or chemistry? As I want to be an artist when I was in secondary too. So from that on, I already start again all my ambitions to be an artist, and I start to paint. After when I complete secondary 4, when I start to teach friends of mine who are taking arts, I just continue to be an artist and I keep on painting. Slowly I gain interest in batik painting. Actually, in my thinking, batik should be washed because the traditional that batik is used for, in Indonesia they make it sarong or something like that. Their batik can be washed, but in Singapore, it seems that they cannot wash, they just iron it off the wax. From there, I try to do more research on batik because the subject or the media of batik is very interests me. Some of the artists in Indonesian, like Amriyaya or Bagong, Bambang Otoro, their painting is very good, and yet why they wash and we can wash. So from there on, I keep on doing research, and at last I found out there's a lot types of resist and also a lot type of dye that we can use. Sometimes I'm using the traditional way of doing the dye, and I add on with another types of dye, with either you use acrylic or fabric dye or something other type of that can be washed. We can always also add on to the painting, for example like collage, right? Or even the Japanese paper. Batik, there is no limit of doing. So in other way, I would like to call it now Temasek batik. After developing my ideas on Temasek batik, at least about 60% use the basic technique of batik. People do batik either on silk or cotton, but we can also use on canvas or even other material that can be stand for the heat of the wax. I would like to show the process of batik painting using my style. There are many ways of making batik. You can either do the traditional way or in my own way, which I call Temasek batik. Temasek batik is my own style of doing batik using wax resist and adding on other material like collage, other paint pigment or dye, and even sand. The finished painting is at least 60% using the batik technique. I start by showing you how to stretch the cotton using the heavy cotton to stretch it across the frame. First of all, we make sure that both sides are equal part. Stretch it and then we staple it. Then once after we staple, we turn it to the other side. We just staple from center, making sure that it's equal. Right. Now, it is very important to make sure that you stretch your cloth evenly because you never follow the vein of the cloth. When the finished product, the line will be not straight when you want to have it a straight line. So that is the most important part of stretching. After stretching the cloth on the stretcher, we try to do the drawing on the cloth itself. So whatever idea that you have, you can always transfer it to your canvas or cloth. For example, you can always add on some detail again. For example, here I like to add on the hair. This is just a rough idea what I'll try to draw or paint to my canvas, and I'll show you how to do the waxing in my own style. Alright, now I try to show the process of waxing. We can get different effects from the waxing itself. We are using canting. Canting is a traditionally Indonesian tools, work as a pen. I dip the canting and make it hot, and I just pick it up, some wax, not too full, clean it up and clean on the tissues, and make sure that you lift your canting up so that it will never drip, and you start to do the waxing. Using canting actually is to create line work, it's not to fill a big space with wax. We have to use a different size of canting to create a fine line. I'm using now is a very big canting. The nozzle here is quite big, so you get a very easy to the wax flow and you get big line. As to make my style, I like to use brush. It's much more big and different layers of wax to create different types of effects to my painting. The face, I just wax the whole part of the face. I'm applying now only a first layer. The wax is not really thick. Later on, I'll put a second layer on top of it on some part. And as you see that I just don't care about the wax dripping, because I know that I'll be waxing most of my painting. Not necessary to use a bigger brush. If you like to have smaller brush for a smaller part first also can. You can just use a smaller brush. So whatever that is already been waxed, if I apply on top of it with another wax, so it will become second layer. Sometimes to know whether it's 2 layer or 1 layer, sometimes I just have to feel. Either sometimes I go this way and sometimes I go this way. Yes, now you can see, I think, correct, layers of wax. For example, like here, you see the color of the wax is different. So that means this one is already 2 times or 3 times, alright, layers of wax. Okay, now I like to show the technique of scraping. So the tool that we are using, ceramic tools, even you can use a toothpick, alright, and sharpen it to make it sharp point, or even a chopstick. And even now, I'm using solder iron. If you feel that that part is too much wax, so we can always remove with solder iron. So the face here, I want the line here to be more clear as to show the eyebrow. So I just scrape. So you get a very fine line this way. Normally, when they do batik, they have to wax both sides to get the darker line. But in this way, I'm doing this way, it's much more easy and much more fine. The more you scrape, the more color can get in, and the lighter that you scrape, that the lighter color will get in. I can always use my soldering iron. You have to be careful about the soldering iron. If the soldering iron too hot, it will burn. So we have to just nicely blend it off. This part I don't want to be too much. I just melt it a little bit. This part of or even this one, you see here, I don't want it too straight, so I just melt a little bit here, so you get tones. Okay, now I am trying to show you how I did my painting in a dye bath. So now I mix all the mixture of the dye in a pail like this, so that it will all properly dissolve in cold water. I mean plain tap water. It's not hot water, because if hot water, that means you are melting the wax. So we have to use cold dye. As to fix the painting, first I have to dip in this chemical, and it will create the dye when I dip in a dye bath. So in this painting, I will do only one color, very dark deep blue. I got to do slowly and carefully, so that some part of the wax would never crack too much. So to get the identity of batik, I need to do some cracking. So when you put your painting in a dye bath, it naturally cracks your painting itself. Now we cannot see the color. Without this, it will never appear the color. Now this is the magic part. Now it's still dark. Because we haven't taken out the wax. You will be surprised when we take it out the wax. So later on, after we take out the wax, I will show you again. So it's very dark now, so you can't see so much. This is the front of the painting, so it will look something like that, but it's still dark and you cannot see so much, and the cracking, and you can see that the effects of different wax is here, right? The darker part, that means the wax is thinner, and then the thicker part of the wax is this, that means it's lighter. So for example, the face here is single one-time waxing, it will be darker, see, but it's all the same dye that I'm using, but the effects of the wax by itself. Right? This is the process of to remove the wax. So we have to use not a hot water, but it's a boiling water. It's much more better. So you will remove the wax. I just dip the painting in a boiling water. Okay. Then I dip in cold water here, so that we can rinse with our hand. Just a second rinse to make sure that the color or the wax been removed a little bit more. Now, once it's already washed, we just squeeze and dry. And the process is always, for me, myself, I treat my painting in reverse way. For example, like normal batik, they always start with lighter color and slowly, gradually to dark color. But for me, I would like to start from dark to light color. After really dry, it get lighter, I will apply another color and collage. This painting will look wonderful to me. When light color go to the dark color become darker also, so it doesn't matter. And then we just dilute. And even if the color go over to or seep through to another place, I don't mind, because the thing is that I would like to make it overlaps, and most probably I will put some collage to this painting. So as I pass by and keep on coloring, and we can see the effects of different wax, layers of wax. For example, like here, you can see that very clear that this is one layer and this is two layers. And also over here, right, this is almost 2 or 3 layers. And then here we use the scraper to scrape, and the design here we scrape so that the blue color will go in. This painting is created in 1978, titled Neighbors. It's all about my neighbors in Taman Jurong, where every individual, they have their own way of living. Alright, this painting was created in 1988, titled Wind. Wind is something like once it blown, so it will never return. Here is the red sun, so I just hope that be happy what you are doing. And also wind represent of a bird here, flying in any direction. And the material that I'm using here, Flamo material, done with different resist. Some I'm using wax, and some of this effect here, I'm using the fixer technique. This is my painting created in 1989, titled River Cloud. And the first painting I did on sand. So one time while I'm alone, I'm sitting and looking in the sky. So the cloud passed by slow and very smooth. The cloud is something like sailing in the sea. I feel that if in the sea, it will be a little bit rough. So I just imagine in the river. Okay, this painting was created in 1987 and titled Melting. When I was in Hokkaido, when I see the snow melting, to me it seemed like a woman figures in the melting snow. This painting was created in 1992, and this is the first, I would say that this is Temasek batik, because I'm doing on canvas and dye buff with some collage and different type of dyes. This title is Dream Garden Blue Sofa. I dream that in the garden there's a very beautiful blue sofa that we can sit and relax. This painting is created in 1996. Title is The Dance of Puppeteer. Image here on top here is the puppet, and here is the puppeteer. Placat in Tatami Room was created in 2015, and it's all about my life before going to Japan and after came back from Japan. The medium that I use is oil on sand. This is some of my new artworks. Anak 1, Anak 2, done in 2019. Both paintings are the caring between mother and child. The first painting is about how the mother loves her child. There is a bird in the sarong cradle to symbolize the mother hopes of the child and the hope that the child will grow up and be free. The second painting, there is an image of a mother and a child, but it shows that it is time for the child to be separate from the mother, which is represented by the broken cage, windows and doors. In both paintings, the technique I use is the Temasek batik with dye buff and color pigment. The figure in this painting called Return is me, done during the COVID-19 period. The shell represents a place of hope surrounded by rough sea. The bird signifying that it will safely return to the place of hope. The goldfish in the bowl represent the precious dreams saved from the rough sea to return to the place of hope as well. This is Temasek batik. The rough sea is done in traditional dye buff method with black, brown and yellow dye. This artwork is titled Race. It's all about me. I was born in the year of the ox. The ox is a very hardworking and obedient animal. Even after working hard in the field, it is still forced to be in risk. I don't understand why. Even if it win, what is after that? I used Temasek batik for this, but this time I did a lot of dots using white pigment in the chanting.